Welcome to McGuire on Wrestling.
Allow me to reintroduce myself.
With Mike McGuire.
Stand up, son. Let me take a good look at you.
This guy's a serious professional.
You know what I want to talk about?
Yeah.
Well, the professional wrestling. Do I have your attention now?
Done shilling. I'm done shilling, okay?
Let's get this show on the road.
I love professional wrestling.
We are less than a week away from WWE's Night of Champions. We are just a few weeks away from AEW's All in Texas. Both companies putting some big presses towards their big summer events as well. I'm Mike McGuire. We're here to talk all about that and a lot more. The show McGuire on Wrestling, part of the Celebrate Wrestling podcast network, online and on the radio, and always free, always about pro wrestling. That's what we talk about here. And on our other great shows, Legends and Champions, which drops every Wednesday. You can get that for free as part of our podcast feed at CelebrateWrestling.com, as well as the alternate commentary table, which posts on Saturdays. So lots for you to download, lots for you to check out and listen to and interact with as well. The Celebrate Wrestling Facebook page is where we'd love to have you jump on board and talk about that as well. Again, you can find all the links to this at CelebrateWrestling.com. Want to let you know, too, quickly, if you want to support the show, you can. It's never required. Again, we provide all this content for you for free, but if you want to support the shows financially, there's a couple ways to do that quickly. Donate by PayPal online at CelebrateWrestling.com, or you can also pick up some merchandise. We do have the Celebrate Wrestling and GWO t-shirts back for a limited time. Do not order them off the website, though, if you want to save some money. If you're listening to the show and you're on our Facebook group, we want to reward you for that. So if you direct message me directly, you're going to save a bunch of money and also save on some shipping as well. We've extended the sale because our printer is getting an upgrade. So our friends at So Normal are getting a brand new, even fancier machine. So we're going to keep the sale on those shirts going till the end of June. Maybe a couple days later if you need the help. But anyway, lots of shirts still on order and lots of shirts getting out there into the hands of people as well. So thank you for supporting the show either way. We got so much to talk about this week. There was a big return, if you're a fan of this guy, on AEW's Collision on Saturday night. Plus, the King and Queen of the Ring tournament set to wrap up on Monday. We'll find out who the finalists are going into Night of Champions. And we do have a question mark around the actual show itself with the latest increase in conflict in the region. Is it going to affect things or not when it comes to the Night of Champions PLE and where it takes place? Smart money is no. We've encountered stuff like this before. Nothing has changed these shows before. But we'll talk to Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer about that and the return of Goldberg. We knew it was coming. The hints had been dropped. And we're getting Gunther versus Goldberg for the World Heavyweight Championship. Why does this move bother fans, and why should it in some ways? We'll talk about both sides of that as well. Don't get me wrong, I see the logic 100% in fans that are like, this makes no sense. And normally that's not a phrase I like to use on this show, but it's Goldberg, so we kind of got to give it a pass, and we'll see what happens. Nevertheless, we'll talk about that and a bunch more here. Like I said, Dave Meltzer is on the way, and we kind of had a little bit of fun with WWE sponsoring things over the last few months here, so we thought we'd ask you if Goldberg's locker that he smashes his face into before he starts a match were to be sponsored, who would you suggest sponsors it? Also, a little independent spotlight preview, another one coming up this week. Levi Knights is actually going to be posting on Tuesday this week because we had some other things going on here at the radio station on Friday, so I didn't get a chance to post it properly. But Levi Knight will be going up on Tuesday, and then you're going to hear from the Matriarch with an incredible story. And she is doing some amazing things, not just in wrestling, but in life. So a preview of that interview and a lot more coming up. But first, as we always do, let's get you through some of the biggest stories in pro wrestling in the past 7 days. It is the 5 count.
You want to hear the breaking news?
Well, on Saturday night's AEW Collision, a surprise return from a long-injured star that had made a brief appearance upon being signed with the company made his return.
Wait a second. It is Kota Ibushi! Kenny Omega's old tracksuit partner from Japan! One half of the Golden Lovers!
As Don Callis touted Kazuchika Okada being the latest member of the Don Callis family, we would see Kota Ibushi make a surprise return after a long break off due to injury. Well, Kota came back and in a big way, taking on Okada, center of the ring, face-to-face. Now, this is setting up a match for the two, likely next week. Of course, this is all the build-up to Okada Omega at All in Texas, where Ibushi, one half of the Golden Lovers. Kenny Omega is a longtime tag team, especially in New Japan. We'll see how this all shakes down here. Either way, great to see Ibushi back after so long, and looking pretty good. The update to next Saturday's WWE Night of Champions from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia looks like this. We start off with the WWE Championship on the line as John Cena defends against CM Punk. The King of the Ring Tournament Finals, Randy Orton, will face either Jey Uso or Cody Rhodes. We'll find out who that winner is on Monday Night's Raw. Also, the Queen of the Ring, we'll see Asuka take on either Jade Cargill or Roxanne Perez. The U.S. champion Jacob Fatu defends against Solo Sikoa. And the Intercontinental Championship sees Dirty Dom defending against AJ Styles. AEW's Dynamite Grand Slam Mexico this past Wednesday was a huge hit. Fans loved it, the wrestlers loved it, and Mercedes Moné left with the CMLL Women's Championship, adding another title to her collection. Of course, she's set to face off against Timeless Toni Storm, but she will be defending that CMLL Championship before the end of the month back at Arena Mexico, so we'll see what shakes down from that. Either way, it has made for a very compelling storyline between Toni Storm and Mercedes Moné. Of course, Mercedes collecting belts everywhere she goes, but can she beat Timeless Toni Storm for the AEW Women's Championship? Time will tell at All In Texas. Well, the latest update on WWE Women's Tag Champion Liv Morgan is that she'll be out 6 to 9 months after suffering a reported dislocated shoulder in her match against Kairi Sane. Now, if you missed Raw on Monday night, the match was just getting started, and a simple front bump is what caused Liv to roll out of the ring and clutch her arm. Now, shortly afterwards, a doctor checked on her at ringside, and the match was called off immediately as the show went to break. Reports have also surfaced now that Morgan will require surgery to fix the shoulder. This was leading up to what seemed to be a Nikki Bella versus Liv Morgan feud for the Evolution 2 PLE. But of course, we'll have to wait and see what happens now moving forward. And finally, a story coming out of the MMA world. We don't usually talk a lot about this here on Celebrate Wrestling because we're a pro wrestling show, but this has been such a weird saga for years now when it comes to John Bones Jones and the undisputed championship of the UFC. Well, Tom Aspinall did what he said he was going to do and retired John Jones without even fighting him. This past Saturday, UFC President Dana White had this to say in front of the media.
John Jones called us last night and retired. John Jones is officially retired. Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight champion of the UFC.
Now, despite being a somewhat successful UFC fighter and champion throughout his career, John Bones Jones was also followed with controversy throughout his entire time, everything from criminal to substance issues, and a series of retirements from UFC, saying that he was done with MMA fighting, then he'd come back to MMA fighting, then he'd leave again, then come back. Either way, like Dana said, Tom Aspinall now the new undisputed heavyweight champion of the UFC moving forward. Still to come on the show, a story you're not going to want to miss. One of the most inspirational people I've ever met, and I didn't even realize that was going to be the case until we started our interview. Plus, we're going to talk to the Wrestling Observer's Dave Meltzer about all these stories and more.
This is McGuire on Wrestling.
The alternate commentary table, ACT, brought to you by the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed. Listen, it's Mitch, it's Dimitri. We got this little pod thing that we do every single week where we talk about the week in wrestling and the way in which we do it from the other side of the railing. Right, Mitch?
I like that.
We're coming at it because we love it. We hate it. The alternate commentary table, ACT. Download it anywhere where you're getting your podcasts.
Sure.
It's time for the Wrestling Observer Insider with Dave Meltzer, McGuire on Wrestling.
We don't talk a lot about MMA on this show because we're a pro wrestling show, but I have to ask you, this is such a story that seems like a pro wrestling storyline in a lot of ways. You got a guy who's got everything going against him, but he's a really skilled fighter, but at the same time, life's just not working out for him. You've got a champion that's in dispute because, of course, he's carrying the title until this other guy comes back. But what can you tell us, the wrestling fans that maybe aren't familiar with the in the weeds stuff? Give us a glossary over the retirement of John Bones Jones, why this isn't a surprise or maybe a surprise, and why it's so crazy once again.
Well, John's a super talented fighter. He's always had issues with his success. People will overlook things. So you become thinking that you can do anything, and everything that he did, though I don't want to say look the other way because that's not true, but people let stuff slide. I mean, this is a guy, one of the things that I remember about him is when he failed his second drug test, the rules in UFC are that's 4 years out, which I don't want to say would have ended his career, but would have really hurt his career. And with no logic whatsoever, they gave him 15 months. And it's kind of like, okay, the rules don't apply to you. And, he failed multiple tests afterwards, and they said, well, it's all from the other test. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But during the period he was suspended, he was never tested for a year. A guy, the rules are that if you're suspended, you get tested more because you're a proven failure at this drug testing thing. They stopped testing him for a year with the idea that, well, he's not going to fight anyway. And it's like, no, you load up when you're not fighting if you're doing steroids and everything like that. So he's had that. He's had legal issue after legal issue, multiple car wrecks, with DUI involvement, including one on a telephone pole right in front of the house of one of my readers in Rochester, New York one day. Often with women, like in this last one. The allegation is that he left the scene of a crime. There was a car wreck, and there was no driver, and they opened the car, and they found a woman who bombed out of her mind and said, as far as she knew, John Jones was driving the car, and he was nowhere to be found. And that happened in February, but it just came out yesterday, the same day that his retirement was announced.
Yeah.
And, he'll probably, he may fight again. He may not. Who knows? He had a verbal agreement to fight Tom Aspinall in Madison Square Garden, and essentially backed out of it for whatever reason. Who's to say? UFC offered him a lot of money. He asked for a big number. They agreed to the big number. They thought it was done. That's why Dana kept saying, it's done, it's done, it's done. He hadn't signed it. And then he backed out of it. Some time ago, Dana was still saying it's done, it's done. He'd backed out of it by that point. And officially announced his retirement. It's like you kind of had to do it at some point. You're either going to fight this guy who's been interim champion for well over a year, or you got to vacate the title. So he vacated the title. He will go in with a legacy of being the Shawn Michaels of the old Shawn Michaels of MMA. He had 4 championship runs, never lost one in the ring, lost 2 on drug tests, 1 on retirement, and 1 due to an arrest. Super talented fighter, and all kinds of problems outside the cage constantly. I've known so many people who know him and didn't learn from his mistakes or didn't care.
Yeah.
How many times does stuff like this happen and he goes, I apologize, I'm going to be a better person. And after a while, you have to stop believing it because the same thing keeps happening.
Well, I'm not snickering to make fun. Obviously, anybody dealing with issues like that, we hope for the best for, obviously. But it was just when you said that the Shawn Michaels of UFC, that's kind of a great comparison, really. And for Tom Aspinall to even say, I'm going to retire him without even fighting him, and then for it to come true, it basically shows just how far gone, unfortunately, that Jones's issues had taken him, right?
Yeah, it's really, it's sad in a lot of ways because what an unbelievable talent. The drug issue still, it's like the drug issue in MMA, it's a big one. And people, for whatever reason, every sport, you have different, whatever the word is, different, the mentality regarding drugs is different. Like in baseball, you could have a Barry Bonds career and you're not getting in the Hall of Fame, right? Roger, whatever, there's so many of them, right? In UFC, I think that the drug issue is worse because you're beating people up. You know what I mean? Baseball, yeah, okay, you're getting an advantage, you're hitting the ball. Maybe the ball will be a long fly out. It goes a little bit over the fence. You get a home run. It changes the game, sure. But, when you're in a cage fight and you're beating people up, I think the drug should be a lot more stringent, and there's a lot more, a lot less leniency towards them. And it's kind of overlooked. Like, John will go down as the greatest fighter of all time. And based on everything that's happened inside the cage, you would say that. I try to argue that, it's like once you failed a drug test, I think that you may have forfeited that despite the fact no one's ever beaten him, because that's a part of the game. You know what I mean? It's like that changes the game. So, but even if he never had done drugs, okay. I mean, he had an incredible talent. He was a fantastic wrestler. He learned striking and great body type for everything. And, he could have been, I'm sure he could have been undisputedly the greatest of all time without the asterisk, had he chosen to be a cleaner liver, I guess would be the best term.
Right.
He'll probably still go down in most people's eyes as the greatest fighter of all time, even with the asterisk. So, maybe he thought that it had caught up with him. I don't think he wants to lose. And at some point, you keep fighting, you're going to lose, right?
Yeah.
And he'd never really, he'd never lost a real fight. He's got a loss on his record in a fight that he absolutely destroyed the guy in and got DQ'd, which was a terrible DQ call because the fight should have been stopped long before the DQ. But, I was at that fight. I actually talked to him like minutes after that fight. And, it was an unfortunate ref call, but essentially John Jones is an undefeated fighter. And to be an undefeated fighter at the championship level for as many years as he had is something that there's not another person in the history of the sport that can say that.
We're talking to Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer and WrestlingObserver.com. Dave, let's shift back to what we normally talk about now, and that is pro wrestling. Wednesday night, I sent you a text. I said, man, I got to get me to Arena Mexico. You texted me back saying, me too.
Man, Arena Mexico. I've been wanting to go there for decades, literally. And, I had many people who know that were really pushing for me to go this week. And what a week it would have been. I mean, I'm not just Wednesday, but they had, they had shows all week long.
Yeah.
They had an incredible show on Tuesday. They had an incredible show on Friday. It was the place. The Wednesday show had the best crowd, though. Not the largest crowd. The largest crowd was the Friday crowd. But that Wednesday crowd was a magical crowd. If you are not even a fan of this, and you watch that Mystico ring entrance, it's like one of the moments of the year to me. It's just like, it was unbelievable. And the crowd was a fantastic crowd. They put on a great show. It was it was probably, when it comes to TV ratings, you have to, how would I say this? In the Max era, this was the highest rating for a show that they have done. And it probably would have been the highest. If you took Max out of the equation, it probably would have been the highest in many years. Because
it was a fun show. It was so different and so random. It's funny, Mitch and Dimitri, who do our alternate commentary table show on Saturdays, they're not familiar with CMLL, so they don't know the Arena Mexico setup. So they thought that setup was exclusive for Dynamite, which it's not, as we know.
No, that's what it looks like three nights a week.
That arena is built specifically for wrestling and boxing, and it has been for decades.
It was a famous boxing arena. It's very rare to have boxing matches now, but in the 60s and 70s, all the big matches in Mexico, boxing matches were there. It's the only arena of that size in the world that was built specifically for pro wrestling, and it was built because El Santo and Blue Demon were just such big draws, and they didn't have an arena big enough because they were turning people away every week, and it's like, why do we keep turning people away? We should build an arena. And that's how Arena Mexico got built in 56, because those guys were such big draws.
But this was kind of perfect for AEW to do their Grand Slam Mexico. I mean, we've seen Mexican-influenced shows from WWE now. We've seen WWE from Mexico. We've seen AEW before with that influence. But this was a legit Mexican crowd in Arena Mexico. And I thought it was a great introduction for AEW fans or any fans anywhere who had never seen what maybe even a CMLL show could look like, even though it wasn't a CMLL show at all. I mean, they did have some, like the 14-person match. I lost so much track during that match. I was trying to keep attention as best as I could. And they're cheering the Rudos, which is throwing me off because they're cheering the bad guys. And I'm just like, okay, who's on whose side right now?
It was more, they were more booing Atlantis than Atlantis Jr. Against and anyone who's in the ring with them, like Kyle Fletcher at the time, would get cheered, which is unique and not unique in the sense that The booing of Atlantis Jr. didn't surprise me. I actually expected it. There's different types of crowds in Mexico City.
So why is that, though, for those that don't know Atlantis Jr. at all?
There is a resentment among the hardcore fans that he got his stardom because of who his father was.
Okay.
And he didn't pay his dues. Sort of like how Dominic Mysterio was as a babyface, but Atlantis Jr. was pushed to the top, right away.
Right.
And the thing is it's almost I almost laugh at it because, even this week, when I was kind of talking about it, there were people from Mexico, hardcore fans, and they're just going like, oh, we boo him because he sucks. And it's like, dude, this guy hasn't sucked in like 8 years. He is great. He's in main events and he holds his own.
Yeah.
He's at the style, he's tremendous, but they still resent him because, and it is true, he would not be where he was if he wasn't Atlantis' son. He, as Atlantis Jr., when they saw that they had Atlantis Jr., for people who don't know, the original Atlantis, I would say would be equivalent to Sting in the United States, or maybe not quite a Hulk Hogan, that level of star. So his son comes in with the same gimmick, and you're going to push him to the top. And he succeeded, but people resented him. So normal Friday night, he doesn't get booed. He usually gets cheered. When you have a show that draws the hardcore fans and not just the regular weekly fans that go maybe 2 to 4 times a year, on those shows, he gets booed. And this was one of the father. I mean, it's like the father doesn't really get booed, but he did on this show, I guess, for whatever reason. The father had gotten booed in the past, too, because, in the same way, in the sense of Atlantis in the, probably from like 2000 on, had become the face of the company. Mm-hmm. And there were people who just kind of resented him as the face of the company because they thought it was a position handed to him. And so there's some resentment of him. There's more of the son, and they got booed, and because this was not your normal Friday audience. This was your hardcore audience that was may go to 2 shows a year, and this was the one they were going to go to because it's their chance to see Mercedes and Will Ospreay, and
all the AEW stars
and those type of people. Yeah, the outside stars. It's like the people who would go to went to Arena on Monterey for Triple Mania to see Joe Hendry and see Angel and Berto and you know what I mean, the people that American stars, so to speak.
Let's go back to that Mystico entrance for a second here, though. I mean, we are in the era of sing-along entrances. We are in the era of karaoke your way to the ring, whatever you want to do. But this was something else, man. I mean, the passion, the emotion in the fans' voices and faces as they were singing this thing. So what is it with Mystico, and why is this entrance so different and so unique?
Again, when he wrestles on Friday, he gets a big reaction. I mean, he gets the biggest reaction of the show almost every week.
Right.
Pretty much every week. Okay. So he's Hulk Hogan. But this was unique. And one of the reasons was, so in 2006, the song Mi Muero came out. And the music video, he's in the music video, okay, from the song, which the music video was about a kid who was looking at Santo pictures and things like that. And the kid in the video was Mystico when he was, a young kid. And so it became his music back in the old days. It hasn't been for years. And essentially, and this is really to Tony Khan's real credit, I got to say this. A couple months back, they did a Mystico 20-year anniversary thing. CMLL did it. So every arena that they run, they had a 20th anniversary show. And as part of the show, they brought back Mi Muero to be his entrance music. And in those cities, the audience went completely bonkers in every city for him to come out with that music. Okay. But then he went back to his normal music that he's doing every Friday night. Okay. And what happened was people online on social media were starting to go, Tony, have Mystico come out with Mi Muero, like that. And, for the good and the bad of any promoter or any person, I do not believe that there is anyone in WWE or TNA or anyone where just random people go, oh, change the guy's music for one show, that would actually do it. Mm-hmm. And he did. And so you got that moment was it was an ode to nostalgia. It'd be like, what it would be like? Hulk Hogan coming out to Eye of the Tiger. That's what it would be. Where people would just freak out because it was so long ago and something new. And a lot of that one's on Tony Khan. He'd had gotten a giant reaction to his regular music too, but this was over the top. They don't sing his regular music on Friday nights. So
well, and it was interesting too. For those that don't know, Mystico was the original Sin Cara in WWE, which was largely viewed as a flop.
Absolute flop, yeah.
And I told you before, I was at that show in Edmonton where he had to re-wrestle Heath Slater and do the finish 3 times over. And Heath Slater, I was literally at ringside just being a dumb fan yelling out, "Why is this happening? We've seen this." I swear to goodness, and he may deny it, I don't know, but he may not even remember it, but I swear to goodness that Heath Slater yelled out, "It's not me, it's him." And then I yelled back, "We know." But
well, Mystico in WWE was an incredible story because he had become such a huge drawing card in Mexico that WWE brought him in. And I knew it was a disaster. I wrote about it beforehand. Yep. I talked about it. This is going to be a disaster because you had 2 sides, neither of whom understood the other. And the minute he comes in, it's like, oh, we need someone to wrestle him. So we'll put Chavo Guerrero in there because WWE doesn't know the difference. It's like, Chavo Guerrero's father and his brothers were luchadors, right? Mm-hmm. Chavo Guerrero wasn't a luchador. He's an American wrestler.
Right.
So it's like him doing lucha. He's not a luchador, number one. And then you had agents, so Mystico has all these unique moves, okay? And so he goes in there, and the first night he does all of his unique moves with Chavo. Place goes nuts for everything. Then the agents come up to him and go, "Well, this makes no sense, and why would you do this? So stop doing this." His mind is gone. And then all of a sudden, he starts getting soured, and then his style is different. So the WWE talent, they're going like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. And it's like, no, he only knows how to do what he knows. That's right. He doesn't know how to do what because he's never done it before.
Yeah.
And the one thing that again, you have to say for AEW is that in WWE, it's like, you must conform to what we do. And in AEW, it's like when I was a kid and watching Los Angeles wrestling and all the Mexican wrestlers were in. Mm-hmm. You know what happened is once Mil Mascaras and Ray Mendoza and Gordon and Goliath became big stars, what happened was the Americans were told, these guys are the big drawing cards now. You do what they do. So they all started learning how to work with them. In WWE, it was, you must learn our style. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but he's got this mentality of, I'm a freaking superstar. I'm this big draw.
Yeah.
And then the wrestlers are going like, I've never seen it. I know you are. And you're arrogant. And it was a marriage, made in hell. And it was an absolute disaster.
Well, either way, after returning to Mexico, there was the whole Sin Cara Azul versus Sin Cara Negro and all this other stuff. So they ended up replacing him eventually. But we have seen Mystico go through all these character transitions in Mexico. I was keeping tabs on the guy because I initially did hope the absolute best for him. And now seeing what he has become all these years later, I mean, it's remarkable. We're talking to Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer and WrestlingObserver.com. Coming up, is it getting Oldberg? Yeah, kind of. More with Dave Meltzer coming up next.
This is McGuire on Wrestling.
CKXU-FM 88.3 in Lethbridge is Southern Alberta's true alternative radio station.
The cream of the crop! Nobody does it better.
Proudly carrying McGuire on Wrestling every week.
Yeah.
If you're looking for something different to listen to,
This is going to be a slobber knocker!
check out our NCRA award-winning lineup of programs or stream us anytime at ckxu.com.
Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
We're back with Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer. Dave, oh my goodness, are fans ever split on this? But Goldberg, not just back, not just facing Gunther, as we all knew this was going to happen, even though I still say Dirty Dom is the guy that should have got the match. Nevertheless, we have...
I mean, he's the perfect opponent, right?
This is what I keep saying.
Oh, no. This is the absolute perfect opponent. He could go lose to him in 3 minutes.
Yes.
And no one, it won't bother anyone. You know what I mean?
He can even lose the IC belt that night and still be fine.
It wouldn't hurt him one iota.
No.
I know with Gunther, it's like, I don't know how you do this finish. I don't know how you do this finish without just being a mess, because nobody wants to see Goldberg lose his retirement match. I mean, I guess that they'll do the whole thing where Gunther beats him and then there's sympathy and this and that, and you go out and he'll get that thing. I mean, they can do it. People don't want to see a WWE Bill Goldberg. They want to see Bill Goldberg in his last match mow somebody down in 2 to 3 minutes. And obviously you can't do that.
And this is why I said, and I've been saying this since it was first even hinted that Goldberg was coming back, and we made this a hashtag. If I can get Dave Meltzer on board with this, Dave Meltzer, you agree, hashtag Domberg, hashtag Golddom, that should have been the match.
100%. 100%.
Validated. 100% validated, right?
100%. 100%. But they had already done the angle with Gunther. They wanted to follow up on the angle.
Yeah.
At the time, when they did the angle, I don't think that they envisioned Gunther being champion for the match. And I don't even think that they really figured out the date of the match. And, AEW hadn't announced All In, and that's part of the date on why they're doing this that night. So it's like there's so many things that happened that changed things. But yeah, no, I mean, the perfect opponent would be somebody who can lose and not be hurt by it. And Dominic is the best guy of all of them. Absolutely.
Oh, the smack he could talk about from his dad in WCW. I'm going to do what my dad couldn't do. Blah, blah, all this stuff could have been great, but whatever. All right. So when it comes down to it, though, there are people who are having babies on the internet about this. It makes no sense. Does this mean Pat McAfee gets a title shot now? This is forever buried. The World Heavyweight Championship as being not important.
It's pro wrestling. It's not the end of the world. I mean,
right.
It's a decision I would disagree with, but it's just a decision. You know what I mean? It's like, and the next day wrestling goes on, and the world, it doesn't hurt the world title one iota. It's just a decision, that.
Okay, but what about the point, though, Dave, that when John Cena had to go through all these obstacles and get The Rock's help and all this other stuff to win the WWE Championship? Doesn't it kind of really?
You always get that
title, though.
You always get that. Logan Paul got a title shot. Remember?
Yeah. Oh, I know. I was going to go there next, but yeah.
I mean, so it's like it's just how it is. It's just pro wrestling. I mean, it's you want logic. I would say. There's none in combat sports. I mean, I can't tell you that, you know what I mean? It's like UFC has done that in the past. Boxing has done it even more. It's decisions. I mean, I wish that the titles were kept differently and you didn't have these 4-ways and all this and tournaments to get title shots. And, you actually built up contenders for months to earn their title shot. That's not modern wrestling. Modern wrestling is not long-term thought. It's like, we got a pay-per-view in 4 weeks. We got a world title, and we got nobody ready. Let's do a tournament, and that's WWE and AEW at times as well. So it's just what it is.
Follow the money, absolutely. Okay, so what about
not even the money? It's just you book week to week a lot more than people would. There's big picture long booking, but there's most wrestling bookings week to week. And
so from a viewing standpoint, then. This is compelling, and I for all the people that think I'm a Goldberg detractor, I'm not. Okay, I honestly don't care. I mean, good for him if he gets the money, get the money. But from a viewership standpoint, they are doing this, as we've talked about, to counter program All In. Is this going to affect things as far as a viewership? Do you think that enough eyes are going to move and say, you know what, I'll just wait and find out what happened on All In. I got to see this Goldberg thing, or is it going to be the other way around?
Well, they're not head to head, although All In may go past 8, Eastern time.
Do they start the show with that on Saturday night's main event?
Start with I wouldn't Goldberg. Do that. I would put it on last because you start it with that one, and then people will tune out of your show. So that doesn't make sense. I would say it probably hurts AEW a little bit, but if it was a normal show, it would hurt it more. It's the big show of the year. It's a pretty loaded show. I think it'll hurt them a little bit, especially because if it was just a normal Saturday night's main event, I would say negligible. Right. But Goldberg retirement's a big deal, and essentially you're going like, okay, how many people are willing to spend 6-7 hours watching? Plus, you got the NXT show head to head.
That's exactly the problem.
No, I think the NXT show's the one that's going to get hurt the most, right? And that's their own decision making of we've got to, they moved because originally the show was put on because they figured that the All In show would be at 8. So when Tony moved it to 3, instead of just letting it be, it's like no. we got to stop Tony's show. So they moved a new show to 3. And that one is just, of the 3 shows that day, that NXT show is the one that's going to take the hit. Not more than the AEW show. And Saturday's main event, I don't think was going to take much of a hit. AEW may take a little bit. NXT is going to just take a major hit. I think it's just so embedded in WWE culture. You know, Vince is gone, but they still do things like that.
You know, some people are saying, oh, this seems like Triple H is getting more and more like Vince as time goes on. I don't know if that's fair to say, but it does seem
from Vince. He's going to be a lot like Vince. I mean, he's more modern. He's more open-minded. There's no doubt, okay? But still, who did he learn 90% of what he knows from? Vince McMahon. And when it comes to competition, probably 100% of what he knows learned from Vince McMahon.
Well, you know what? Lastly here, Dave, Liv Morgan, of course, the unfortunate injury that happened right at the start of the match. Again, something simple, something very basic, just a simple forward drop down, and all of a sudden she's got her shoulder dislocated, was rolling out of the ring.
And surgery.
And surgery, yeah. I was going to ask about this.
It was actually, of all the things that night, we knew it wasn't good, but it was actually the worst scenario of all. It turned out she's going to be out for 6 months or more. And it's, yeah, injuries happen and everything like that. And there's never a good time for an injury. But, she was really on a roll, she's a fantastic performer in this role. And what a time to get hurt. And, she's hurt her shoulder before, so it's a chronic thing. That's probably why it got hurt. It's just like people have those injuries. Sami Zayn's got shoulder problems. Randy Orton's got shoulder problems. It happens, and it can happen with, Randy Orton had the shoulder go out when he was punching the mat before he did the DDT, the RKO. Yep. It's like Sami Zayn's shoulder went out when he was raising his own hand once. It's like, it's just one of those things. It's not from doing something dangerous or reckless. It's just things happen. Sometimes the injuries are the safest things when we watch these guys do these death-defying things and go like, someone's going to die, someone's going to break their neck, and no one ends up being hurt. And then someone gets hurt on a move that she would take routinely and you would never bat an eye at. I
mean, we've seen people, do crazy moonsaults, everything else, and then they roll their ankle running into the ropes. It's just something crazy. But actually, you know what? One more here, only because of what's happened in recent international events. I say nothing's going to affect the show here, but based on what's happened, I don't want to get into the whole war and politics and semantics and everything here, but there has been U.S. bombing now in Iran. Some people are speculating as to whether or not that could change the plans for the Saudi Arabia show with travel, with the event itself happening. Do you see that affecting whether or not Night of Champions still happens in Saudi Arabia?
It's too early to say. Right now, if nothing changes, I would say no, it won't affect it. They'll go, they'll do the show. Right. If things get worse as the week goes on, you monitor the situation. I mean, like right now, I don't see anything that will stop the show today. Come Thursday, if it's a really dangerous situation and it's a war zone, the war zone's not really going to be Saudi Arabia so much, but I'm not expecting it to change, but you can't go say 100% because we don't know what the next week's going to bring.
Okay, well, I just bring it up because, we've had other incidents happen internationally that haven't stopped this from happening. There were similar concerns to this before, but I just wanted to, because a lot of people are saying,
this is different from that one. And the other one, because the other one was Saudi Arabia and this one is Iran. So it's different, but the other one was an isolated incident and more of a moral situation. And this one is more of a safety situation. Mm-hmm. So if it becomes, they're not going to go and send everyone there if they think that there's going to be danger to the guys. I should say that because the guys were held hostage once too, but nobody knew that going in. But, I expect the show will take place, and if it doesn't, it'll be something really bad and far worse for us to deal with than the fact that the wrestling show isn't taking place, because it's going to take something real bad for that show not to take place.
He is Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer. We've talked about a lot today, man. We covered the gambit. This is what happens when you take a week off. We get too much to talk about. Yeah. Nevertheless, I'm sure you've been busy writing away as well. What are some things people can read about in the Wrestling Observer newsletter?
Oh, man, this week's a lot about Mystico, Arena Mexico, the AEW shows there, Bill Goldberg, a lot about Bill Goldberg and Gunther and background of both. New Japan Dominion, coverage of that, and G1 coming up. Just basically the state of New Japan right now. A lot of different small things in WWE as well, so pretty newsworthy week. Maybe not as newsworthy as next weekend will be, though.
Well, just saying, if you have room in there, I can send you our graphic for hashtag GoldDom, hashtag Domberg, if you want to really officially get on the wagon here, Dave. But in the meantime, we'll let you go until next week, sir. Always appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Coming up next, an incredible, inspirational story. You'll meet Sage Morin, the Matriarch, and see what wrestling has helped her overcome. That's on the way.
This is McGuire on Wrestling.
Legends and Champions is your weekly fix to go old school, looking at the classic world of professional wrestling. From Hulk Hogan to the Hitman Bret Hart to the Icon Sting to the total package Lex Luger. We have it all each and every week on Legends and Champions, part of the Celebrate Wrestling Network. And it's available on a Wednesday with me, Andy Evans. See you there.
Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
John Jones called us last night and retired. John Jones is officially retired. Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight champion of the UFC.
Here now for a special podcast exclusive segment, the one and only Joe Aguinaldo. Joe, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. Feel all like special being the podcast exclusive segment thingy.
In other words, we didn't have time to put you on the radio. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all good, dude. It's all good.
We had a lot to talk about with Meltzer. We went through all sorts of things, including the John Bones saga. Now, I initially wanted to have you on to talk just about this, but it's going to be a tale of two Johns today. But you being our resident MMA fan here in the panel anyways, I don't think anybody pays as close attention to it as you do. John Bones Jones is a name that I know, that a lot of fans who barely know anything about MMA know, because he was one of the greatest, but also one of the most hindered due to issues outside the octagon. So purely as a fan, because I don't need you to, Dave's gone into all the analysis of the drug use and failing the drug tests and the rules and USADA and everything else. But as a fan, does John Bones Jones retiring once again, does it tick you off? Are you okay with it? Does it matter to you anymore? Do you think that the new undisputed champion should have been undisputed from the get-go? Where do you sit on all this?
Okay, so this is such a weird topic, because I guess it depends on how you look at, the sort of that whole greatest of all time argument, right? So I will say that John Jones, despite all of the issues that he's had, okay, so let's not worry about the drug thing and the domestic violence stuff and all that stuff that he's been through. Just looking at his record, I mean, for a period of time, this guy was untouchable. Mm-hmm. And from that perspective, you have to give him his flowers. You have to say, I personally am not going to call him the greatest of all time, because I think that was a manufactured thing from Dana White personally, but I would put him in the argument of greatest of all time. Just again, based on his record from, I want to say the early 2010s all the way up to about 2019. If you look at who he fought, it was a who's who of MMA. A dude had amazing skill. And the scary part is, now let's bring in all of that other stuff. Had he not had those issues, man, this guy could have been above and beyond the greatest fighter of all time.
Right.
The fact that he has all this stuff outside of fighting, and we're still considering him the greatest of all time, that says a lot about how good this guy was. And I gotta preface this by saying I'm not the biggest John Jones fan. Like, me personally, if you were to ask me who my greatest of all time is, I'm going to go with Georges St. Pierre, because there's a guy that never had any problems. He fought everybody. He won in 2 weight classes. He fits all the criteria. But man, John Jones, you just cannot discount this guy.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up GSP as well, because I mean, there was a tiny controversy around him when he left the UFC the first time. And it's funny because that's when I met him, was right afterwards, and that's when he gave me the worst signature ever on the UFC title belt behind me here. But but in all seriousness, I mean, finding fighters you can look back at in UFC that haven't had some sort of issue, I mean, it's not a long list. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying they're all as severe as John Jones. And I'm not saying that all UFC fighters are criminals or substance abusers either, but I mean, I always get nervous about getting behind a guy or girl because then all of a sudden something comes out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And perfect example was Conor McGregor. I thought Conor McGregor was the best thing going. And then things happen and things aren't that great all of a sudden. And then you see all this psychotic stuff with throwing luggage at buses and everything else, or bricks or whatever it was. It's just like there's hyping a fight and then there's just being someone who needs to really check themselves. You know what I mean?
See, and here's the thing. I'm going to bring it back to pro wrestling. Okay. So Conor McGregor, he's a great draw. I wouldn't necessarily
not anymore.
No. But I wouldn't necessarily call him a great fighter.
Right.
Okay. So like John Jones is the combination of both. He's a good draw and he's a guy that can actually fight. GSP, I think maybe not to the same extent. He was a draw person that could fight for a time. Ronda Rousey was that same person. I'm struggling with John Jones because again, I'm not the biggest fan of John Jones. Okay.
Yeah.
But again, I'd be an idiot as a fight fan, as someone who has been watching UFC since 1993. I would be an idiot if I said you can't talk about him in that category because he's that good.
Whereas McGregor, I get there's a ton of asterisks there, and
like McGregor was a good round or two. Yeah. But after you got him past that second round, he had no cardio. John Jones could fight like one round, he could knock you out, he could submit you, he could fight the distance. And again, like if you believe some of the things that even he has said about himself, where he would say that he would try to give himself an out by sabotaging himself before fights by going partying, and he's still dominating people. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like that. Yeah. That's pretty impressive. Well,
I think that's the entertainment fan in me too, is that, like when Conor was, not obviously facing all these horrible allegations and everything else that he's going through now, guys like him, Chael Sonnen, another guy who, I kind of got on the bandwagon for a little bit until I didn't. I like the talkers. I like the guys that can talk you into the building.
Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes you're hitching your wagon and all of a sudden you realize the horse is a little less,
well, and again, I'll bring it back to pro wrestling, right? You've got your workers, but really who resonates with the crowd? It's the guys that can do the promos. It's the guys that can talk, the guys that can entertain, who may not necessarily be the best in the ring. And that's not a knock on anybody, but like, you and I have had this discussion over and over for like years. It's like, who's the greatest of all time? Is it The Rock, Stone Cold, or Ric Flair and Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson or whatever, right? So like, I think it just depends on how you look at things. But again, coming back to John Jones, he's probably one of the rare guys that had both. He was a draw and he was a guy that you could like, who had all the skills.
Well, there you go. A little perspective on the John Jones situation. Our friend Joe Aguinaldo coming in from Mississauga, Ontario on the show here. And Joe, I wanted to talk to you about this before we let you go today, because John Cena on SmackDown on Friday recreated the infamous pipe bomb promo almost to a T. This time it's CM Punk laid out on the Slim Jim sponsored table, which, you know what? I'm going to keep you for the sponsorship segment too. That's how we're going to end the show today. So you're in the podcast bonus for now, but we're going to do a wrap segment with you in a second here about the sponsorships.
All right.
Anyway, CM Punk laid out through the Slim Jim sponsored table, which just looked ridiculous. Cena does everything that Punk did back in the pipe bomb day, and it got the crowd on his side. Have we seen John Cena turn face again?
I don't know if we've seen him turn face yet, but if he keeps cutting promos like that one, it's going to happen. It'll be inevitable, because like that promo, hey, I'm breaking the fourth wall. Hey, Claudio. Hey, Matt. Hey, Nick. Like that stuff. And the line about you were the best in the world for 7 minutes 14 years ago. Yeah. I thought, chef's kiss, man. And that's the thing. Like, again, he keeps cutting promos like that. He's going to turn himself face, whether he likes it or not.
Are you on board with the conspiracy theorists that say by shouting out Matt Cardona, Nick Nemeth, and Claudio Castagnoli, or CC, that was actually supposed to be Matt and Nick Jackson and Colt Cabana?
You know what? I would not. Okay. That is a very deep cut. All right.
It's a pretty big reach.
Well, here's the thing though, because in when Punk did that pipe bomb, he kind of did sort of the same thing. So I wouldn't put it past.
Except these are all people that have noted issues with CM Punk.
Fair.
Not the guys he named, but
yeah, the other guys,
obviously, and Colt, right? So
and again, that is a very deep cut, and I wouldn't be surprised if they went that route, because that whole promo, okay, the pipe bomb part 2, if you're a wrestling fan, if you're someone who was watching back then, and even back then, like, that pipe bomb was a big deal, I wouldn't be shocked if Cena did it and intended it that way. Let's put it that way.
Well, stick around. Joe's going to be back in just a little bit. For all you podcast listeners, though, as promised, a highlight of a conversation with Sage Morin, or Sage Mo, a.k.a. the Matriarch, overcoming tragedy through pro wrestling. You're going to hear some of her story today, the full Independent Spotlight. And again, I owe Levi Knight his as well. So here's what's going to happen this week. You're getting today's show today, obviously. On Tuesday, you'll get Levi Knight. On Wednesday, it's Legends and Champions. On Friday, it will be Sage Mo, the Matriarch, with her Independent Spotlight. And then back to Saturday with the alternate commentary table before we start the week all over again. But Joe Aguinaldo sticking around for one more segment. Sage Mo on the way next. Well, as promised, we continue our McGuire on Wrestling Independent Spotlight, meeting interesting indie wrestlers from across Canada and around the world. And today is a really incredible story. I saw this girl posting her experiences in pro wrestling, posting a trip to Mexico that she took, and some experience she got down there, and really kind of globbed onto her presentation, her gimmick, which isn't really a gimmick. But what happened during this conversation, and this was after a very hot outdoor show in Medicine Hat, Alberta. It was part of a festival that was going on out there, and Pure Power Wrestling had been booked to do some shows out there. Anyway, the Matriarch, Sage Mo, was booked to be a part of this show in a women's match, and we got the chance to finally sit down and chat. I'd actually asked her if we could do that when she was down from Edmonton, and she was all for it. So we had the chat lined up, but what was really interesting was where our conversation went. It started out kind of talking about the typical pro wrestling things, and then she revealed to me a part of her life story that really is what brought her to pro wrestling, and you would never imagine how. The full interview will post this Friday, so please make sure you subscribe to the podcast feed. Make sure you check out CelebrateWrestling.com. But this is a bit of the Independent Spotlight with Sage Mo, the Matriarch.
I never wanted to be a wrestler. I just wanted to be a mom, and I was really happily living my dream. I had 2 beautiful sons, and I was just, like I said, living my dream, making cookies and all that. And we went out to celebrate one day. It was a beautiful day, and we were celebrating on a restaurant patio, and we picked a table out in the sun, and we were laughing, and we raised our glasses of water in a cheers to life, ironically. Just moments before a drunk driver drove his SUV through the patio, running over our entire family and killing my firstborn son right in front of me. And that was just, like everything in my world came crashing down. And I really, really, really tried to make as much noise about it as possible, because they were really trying to just sweep it under the rug. The guy who killed my son was like an old boys club member.
Okay.
Friends with judges and lawyers and
Right.
stuff. So I really knew I had to make a lot of noise about it, and I really relied on my community to get me through that. And so Monster Pro Wrestling in Edmonton was one of the first organizations. They put on a Justice for Geo event, and they made a little belt with Geo's name on it, and they had our whole family sitting in the front row, and they brought us into the ring, and they had the whole crowd chanting Geo's name as they gave us this belt. And it was just such a moment, so powerful. But this was a couple months after my son died. Like, I was still very, very early on in my healing journey. So we fast forward through 9 years of like just messed up healing journey, and I start modeling, and I start burlesque dancing, and I start just getting out there more. And Massive, who stayed connected to me on Facebook, says, like, I think you'd be a good fit at MPW. And I think he thought more along the lines that I'd be like reffing or announcing
maybe
or like
a
something.
ballet,
Yeah,
something like
right?
that.
But I said, I grew up with 10 brothers,
Right.
like thrown out in the bush. So I'm like, I want to throw people around. And I mean, when I tell you wrestling saved my life, I mean that with my heart and soul. Like, wrestling has completely saved my life and gave me purpose and gave me drive, and it's given me a reason to just keep going. And in a weird way, it almost feels like wrestling was a gift from my son. So I'm following this path wherever it takes me, and I'm having fun, and I'm bringing my youngest here with me too. He's here watching today. And so we're happy living life now, and that's through wrestling. So that's the greatest gift.
I don't mean to not be looking at you as I say this, but just as you said that, so I've been doing radio for 20 years, and I just learned right now who you actually are. I remember Gio's story. I remember your story, and for those that don't know the story, wow. Okay, it was
quite a time.
Yeah.
Like, it was awful, and it was international news.
Yeah, and that's just, I remember talking about it on the radio and news and stuff, and so I had no idea that's who you were.
Yeah, it was quite a journey.
I apologize for that. That's
I mean, that was who I was, and and it's been able, through wrestling, being able to evolve and being able to grow into somebody who's not a victim, somebody who is victorious. It's been so amazing, and like, what a journey.
Well, it's really a pleasure to meet you now. Before, I was already kind of captivated by your story, but as someone who's gone through not something to that degree of violence and loss, but I know what it's like to try and take on the system as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only imagine, for lack of a better term, the extra factors that you had to deal with just being through all the things that we've talked about you growing up through. So congratulations on making something really positive out of this.
Thank you.
And I hope you get to share your story more. And thank you for sharing it here with us today. You know what? I think if you're out there listening to this right now, and if you're interested at all in the humanity of pro wrestlers that you see at any level, that this is a shining example of it. And look up the Justice for Gio stuff too, and you'll see what Sage and her family went through. And I had no idea you were Gio's mom. So again, it's an absolute pleasure to meet you, and I'm so sorry, but at the same time, I'm happy that you're okay, and I'm happy that you're pulling through in such a positive way. So
thank you so much, and thank you for having me on your show.
Again, I don't care if you subscribe and then stop subscribing after you hear this full Independent Spotlight, but this Friday, the entire conversation with Sage Morin, Sage Mo, the Matriarch, will go up. You'll hear her entire incredible wrestling story, but you'll hear more about that conversation and what her life and the new normal that came before pro wrestling created for her and her family, and how she uses the tragedy that happened to her and her family as a way to spread positivity and also maybe redefine perceptions along the way. So check it out for sure if you can, and please spread the word about this one, because very, very proud of this one. It might actually make an appearance in the full episodes in the future here, because I'm telling you, I've done a few of these Independent Spotlights. I've known hundreds of wrestlers through the years, and I've never been impacted the way this story hit. So before we go, we're going to leave on a slightly silly note, and that is back with our friend Joe Aguinaldo, who called in from Mississauga as we chatted about something that is coming up with Goldberg's return to the ring, and something that we think TKO and WWE might do to try and cash in on it some more. Just before we wrap up this week's show, Joe, we were joking earlier about how Slim Jim has now sponsored the tables in WWE. We saw CM Punk thrown through one of those on Friday's SmackDown. Now, the question came from our friend Sweet Vinny B, and I decided to make it an actual poll, something you can actually vote on or leave your feedback on the Celebrate Wrestling Facebook page, which if you're not following yet, you really should be, because it's really good. But the question is, with Goldberg having his final match coming up on Saturday night's main event, will they show him smashing his head into the locker like they used to in WCW? And if so, who should sponsor the locker?
Oh my God.
Joe, I'm going to give you some of Vince's picks for Sweet Vinny B here. He says, Mountain Dew Major Melon. Taco Bell, because when you hear the bell, smashing Goldberg's head. Mr. Noodle was a good one as well. Alan Chambers said Tylenol or Bauer for helmets, like hockey helmets.
Right.
And then Devin Axman said the AARP. So those are some of the comments that came in. And then there's a few more on the actual reel that I posted. A lot of people actually going with Tylenol. Oh, this is a little mean. Chris Nowinski.
Oh, God.
Oh, and then Craig Usher says AEW.
Oh, God.
Well, we know that one's not happening, but if you were to sell a locker sponsorship to Bill Goldberg or to the locker, I guess, to a company for Goldberg to smash his face into, who would you choose? Well, I'm on board with the Tylenol crew, to be honest.
I had Tylenol. I mean, brought to you by Concussion Movie, if you want to go that route.
That's a little dark.
I know, but that's the CTE movie. American Locker. That's a locker brand. There's a bunch of places you can go with this, but no, I kind of like the Tylenol. Or really, my other thought when you mentioned the head into the locker, I'm thinking, is there a hard hat brand that we can, you know what I mean, like a helmet, like CCM? There you go. Let's use them.
We get Carhartt to make a head protector.
Bubble wrap.
Yeah, a good bubble wrap company.
Bubble wrap company. Yeah, exactly. Right.
I think the real winner in this, though, would have to be Band-Aid.
Oh, Band-Aid. Yes.
Band-Aid brand Band-Aids. They got to be on there.
And then specifically because you asked me, I'm always going to say Mr. Big Stick. Just because it's Mr. Big Stick.
Oh, we can't even get them to sponsor our show, and we give them so much love, Maple Leaf Foods. Seriously, if you know anybody and there's a Maple Leaf plant near me, and I still can't get them to answer my emails, but seriously, we should be getting some Mr. Big Stick sponsorship on this show.
Somewhere. Yeah,
at least a discount coupon, 25% off Mr. Big Stick. Mr. Not So Big Stick.
Mr. Not So Big Stick.
All right, he is Joe Aguinaldo. Thanks for ending the show on a fun note with us, friends. We're back with you next week after WWE's Night of Champions. We'll see if it actually takes place overseas or if something else happens. But until then, as always, thank you for listening. And let us do what we do. Play safe, drive safe. Be seeing ya.
McGuire on Wrestling. Online and on the radio. Listen to the show Mondays at 4 p.m. Mountain Time at CKXU.com. Wherever you get your podcasts and at McGuireShow.com.